Well, good to see everyone. Welcome to our founder story today. I head up operations for Rev1, and I'm really excited about today's guest because I've known her for quite a while and gotten to work closely with her. So before we kick off our conversation, I do want to do a formal introduction and give you some background on our speaker. So Sheri Chaney Jones is the co-founder and CEO of SureImpact, which is a case management and reporting platform that connects nonprofits with their funding organizations. She has more than 20 years of experience helping mission-driven organizations save money, achieve performance goals, and operate more efficiently through performance measurement and evaluation. Across her career, it includes experience in early education, domestic and juvenile courts, universities, healthcare, mental health, and the aging system. She's got a real passion for using data to uncover each organization's unique story and has saved her clients hundreds of thousands of dollars. She has a bachelor's of science from OSU with a distinction in psychology and a master's in industrial and organizational psychology from Central Michigan University. Again, I've had the pleasure of working with Sheri since she became a Rev1 client in early 2019 and have watched her not only launch her product in the market, but build a successful company that is gaining strong customer traction. So with that, please meet Sheri Chaney Jones.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here, Christy. Thanks for the introduction.
Of course. So let's just get right into it. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to found SureImpact.
Sure, absolutely. Well, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be a venture-backed, high-growth tech software CEO, I would say, I think you have the wrong person. As Christy mentioned, I'm an industrial and organizational psychologist by training. And have had it, prior to this life, I have a 20-year career working with government and nonprofit organizations, helping them better measure and communicate their impact and value. My very first job out of graduate school, where I thought I was going to design selection tests for a living, was to help people with severe and persistent mental illness find jobs. So I was working on this project called the Job Profile Questionnaire, which looked at DSM characteristics, so the disabilities and the characteristics of that, and then it matched people with jobs. So case managers would work with these individuals, take that assessment, predict you would be successful in this job or another. So that opened up a whole new world for me, where wow, we can use data for social good. Had the director of performance evaluation with the juvenile courts. Around that time, more and more government funders were requiring impact and outcome measurement to attract these large federal and state grants. So the court said, we need someone to be managing all of our data. So I set up the office there, then did the same thing with the Department of Aging at the state of Ohio level. And during that time, that was around the Great Recession, and there was I created this is my second product I created at that time called the long-term care calculator. And what that did is it demonstrated how long-term care programs in Ohio saved the state of Ohio $250 million a year in Medicaid, and it allowed people to stay and be more successful. But at that time, I looked around and I thought, why aren't more organizations using their data to make these kind of decisions, to tell that impact story, to attract more funds so they can create greater good in the world? And I felt the call to entrepreneurship. I left the state of Ohio, founded my first company, Measurement Resources Company, and it's an organizational development and research firm, basically taking all of that I learned from starting up these two evaluation shops, performance management shops, and was infusing that culture, infusing those processes and systems into organizations as a consultant. And about around like 2016-ish, our customers were coming to me consistently and saying, we love the insights your firm is providing, but we want this data at our fingertips. The systems are pretty manual, pretty clunky. They take a lot of time, or they take a lot of money to have your shop do that for us. What technology would you recommend? And we did our own market research, competitor research. We didn't even know that's what we were doing at the time, but I started analyzing all of the different products on the market that claim to do this. And frankly, I couldn't recommend any of them for a variety of reasons. Either they were way too expensive, would still require way too much of our fees on top of having that software. So we participated in the Rev1's Customer Learning Lab in 2018. And really, my co-founder, Matt, who's also my husband, we went to that. And I think we went to that hoping we would learn that this is not a good idea, to be honest. Like, no, you shouldn't do this.
Really?
but what
I hadn't heard that one yet.
Yeah, but what we learned was that 55% of our ideal customers said that if SureImpact was in the market, they would purchase it. And so because I'm a data-driven person and I value data so much, it's like, how can I deny that information? One, I knew the pain points very, very well because we were seeing it every single day. I knew that I had a vision for what it should be, what needed to be in the market. And now I had people saying they wanted it and they would pay for it. I had to give it a shot. But I wasn't going to do it alone. And I've learned now in this startup journey that what we did at the beginning is a bit unheard of. But I did, you don't know what you don't know, so you do what you think you should do. So I went to some of our in the measurement resources customers that I knew really well and knew their problems very well. And I went to them and I said, hey, we're thinking about building this platform, but we don't want to do it alone. Would you be willing to join us on this journey? And I got 5 in a matter of, it was relatively short period of time, like maybe from the time of like November, I started to pitch this idea to January, they were all on board to give us $15,000 each. So they essentially paid for their first year's license up front. And we found our development partner, we worked with AWH, and we built the MVP and the beta and got them on board. And then we secured about 5 more in that first year in 2019. And we went to market in 2020, and I guess that's the rest is history. But that's how we got here. That's how SureImpact began.
Yes. Well, it's just so fascinating to see how all of those inputs from various industries, various ways that you were looking at how the data could be used, all pointed you to the same solution. And so you've set up the problem very well, and you've talked about how you got your customers on board early, which is obviously something that Rev1 is a big advocate of. Get your customers to pay for your first product. So give us your elevator pitch then for the solution of SureImpact. What does it do?
Yeah, so SureImpact is an impact management software that enables mission-driven organizations to better measure, track, and communicate their unique social impact. And with that, embedded within that is a robust case management platform, including reporting and data aggregator.
So how would, if I'm your target customer, how would I use the product? How would I interact with it?
Sure. So if you are our target customer, there's two sides of our product. There is the individual nonprofit side, as well as the foundation and funder side. So if you are an individual nonprofit or organization, how you would use SureImpact is you would use it every single day. You would log in and you'd be in there tracking how are you interacting with your customers or clients, what are their needs, how are you meeting those needs, you'll be tracking their success over time, whether it's income success, job success, housing stability success, food security success. Like all of our customers have different results or how they define success. But for you, you'd be using it to track that. And then if you're an executive leader, you'll have those insights at your fingertips. So anytime you're going to do a pitch or you're writing a grant, you can log in, or you're having a board meeting, you can log in and see your organization's impact and put that into your pitches or your stories or your grants, as well as then having conversations, accountability conversations with your staff around what's working, what's not working, what should we invest more in because it's working and it will get us better results quicker. What should we maybe stop doing because it's not working? So you can start to have those types of conversations and have that insight in real time. Now, if you're a funder, with our collaborative model, you may not be tracking your everyday work in SureImpact, but how you're using SureImpact is to be understanding the impact of your entire portfolio. So the grants that you give out, what is the social return on investment that they're making. And that helps you be a better grant maker. It helps you be a better partner, because you can then have those same conversations with those organizations that you fund around, what do you need to be more successful, or how can we make you be more successful? Or, hey, like we have the Seymour Institute is one of our customers. They have a national network, and they're able to look at, like, maybe the Atlanta region is outperforming everybody else. It doesn't mean punish everybody else. It's about driving those insights and sharing those insights so that we can improve the rest of the sector, because maybe there's something in, and I don't know if Atlanta's better, let me be really clear. I'm just using that as an example, but just, kind of saying, hey, we've learned this in this region. Let's help our other networks with this new information type of thing.
So it sounds like it's pretty transformational for both sides of that equation, right? Not only having access to the data, but access to be able to look at what's working best. Where do I want to put more funding, or where do I want to help push my grantees to improve? So where did you get your passion for data to begin with, your drive to make it more useful? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I will say, first and foremost, I think it was divinely given, because I can't really speak to why. I mean, as early as, in high school, I would be doing research projects for fun. I love to understand people and looking at the data and what drives performance and what drives success. That's just always been a curiosity for me. But my passion for using data in the social sector really got honed in when I was at the courts. And one of the very first programs that I was asked to evaluate, we learned it was actually making young people worse. So essentially, if you were court ordered into this program, I'm a statistician, so I controlled for all the variables. But what we learned was that kids that were court ordered to this program were more likely to go back into the juvenile justice system.
Wow.
They not been put into that program. And so I think that's why I have such a passion for this work, is because the people were lovely that ran that program. There was nothing wrong with the design or what the people, were trying to accomplish, but they needed to tweak some things to make it more effective. And if they had not had that data, if they were not looking at that information, we could be 15, 16, 17 years out, and kids still could be being put into that program with the likelihood that we were using public dollars to send people really back to the places that we were trying to keep them from. And so that's just, since that time, it's like, no, we have to be using data to drive our decisions in the social sector.
Wow, that's a fascinating example. I can't imagine how that team must have felt when they got that information and how that changed them thinking about their program. Mm-hmm. Well, so you started with what you still have, a successful services business, and have now launched SureImpact as a high growth software company. It sounds like the transition timing came when you looked at the data and said, this is an area we need to go after. How have you navigated that process, though, of going from services to software, and what are you seeing along the way?
Sure. I think one of the advantages that I've had is that I did have a 10-year entrepreneurial journey before launching SureImpact. So I'd already kind of gone through the steps in my service-based business to start to understand the importance of delegation and scaling myself, and making sure that we had systems and processes so that the business could run without us. Now, when I said yes to SureImpact, that had to be accelerated a little bit faster, because knowing that, okay, this needs all of my attention, or the most of my attention, I must grow that. It just kind of leaning on the systems and the processes and for the team here at Measurement Resources, so I could fully step into SureImpact. And then because I'd already had that experience, and I learned the hard way with Measurement Resources how difficult it is to take yourself away from a company when everything is dependent on you. I already knew that pain. So when I started SureImpact, everything I have done and continue to do is very intentional about making sure that it is not Sheri driven, if you will. Like obviously a technology takes my process and that helps scale the process because it takes what we were doing manually, puts it now in an automated process. But then in terms of like our sales and our marketing strategies, the customer success, customer onboarding cannot be me. I can't, so that was a huge win, is when I transferred that over to my customer success leader and she's doing it. And I'm not in those calls and we have happy customers. Same thing when we hired our first business development person and watching him lead a sales call and closing his first few deals and seeing that the sales can be replicated. And so just being very, very intentional with the mindset that if we want to scale, we want to grow, we want to have the impact we want in the world, it cannot be about me. It has to be about systems and process, and be very clear about that.
Which can be difficult to give over the reins of those things, right? On the one hand, you want to know that you need to scale in that way, but on the other hand, what's worked and it's hard sometimes to do that. So just take that one step further when you just think about building a team, right? Going from you and Matt, your co-founder, and now adding key team members. How have you thought about that growth of the team, and how do you get them aligned up front around the vision that you care so deeply about and it's so a part of your history?
Yeah, well, I mean, so far I've been very lucky in terms of, I think we have a very, very compelling vision. If you're a fan of the Strength Finders, I lead with futuristic. So just naturally, I'm a bit of a visionary, and so that is something that I'm able to share with our team. And the work that we do it's really good work. I don't know that every startup and software company has such a strong mission related to it. So a lot of people are attracted to be part of this movement and to be part of creating the social impact that we're able to create. So I think that part I have covered, that's easy. The other part then is just being very intentional about what are the complementary skills that we need on the team. I believe in seeking out the best, as I always say, I want the best resource I can find for the amount of money that I can pay. I think that's how you drive quality, is making sure that you don't skimp on things that matter. And so making sure that there's mission alignment, making sure that the skills are there. Again, I'm a huge fan of data. So in our hiring, we use assessments to look at, different skills, because we all have, and again, I'm an industrial and organizational psychologist, so I really understand the biases that we can have when we're hiring or interviewing people, and making sure that I don't have a team that is just a lot of people like me with the same skill sets, because that won't help us grow either.
Yes. Well, yeah, I buy into all of that as well. And I see it in action. I think it's just a smart way to run and grow your business. Well, speaking of skill sets and resources, so you're not a coder per se, as you hear a lot about in the software industry. So not a technical founder of sorts, but how have you managed that? Has it been difficult? And then just navigating the process of building a great product when you know the vision of it, but you've got to still manage building something that's technical that you might not be, as skilled in.
Yeah. Well, what I've realized, when you start a software company and you're not from that world, you learn a lot of new language that you didn't know before, or at least I have. And so what I have realized is that I have been a product manager my whole entire career. I have always been the go-between between the clients, meaning the nonprofit leaders or the executive directors, and the IT staff, because I've always been like, hey, let's build the impact measurement framework. This is how it needs to work. These are the insights we need, and then talking to the technical team to make it happen. So although I didn't know I was a product manager all those years, I have always played that role, and I've been actually, frankly, very successful in it. And so now doing, leading SureImpact and communicating the vision and the business requirements and all that stuff to work with the technical team to build a successful product. that experience hasn't been so different than what I've done my whole entire career. There are things that I think, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why I did, when I went to, we had a lot of options in terms of who we're going to partner with to help us build this. And I knew I wanted a whole team, because I would not know what language to build it in or what platform to build it. I didn't even know the difference between Azure or AWS and those types of things. So I did need a highly technical team to work through those things, to make recommendations, to educate. And so I knew for me, because of not having, those necessary skills, I needed to have people on my team that knew those, so we could build a high quality product faster.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, I think a lot of folks can learn from that type of thinking, and really understanding that to realize that vision, you need to think about what does the user want and need, and how are they going to interact with it. So switching gears a little bit, in the beginning, you talked about really aligning with your customers early on. That's something that I feel like Rev1 is a broken record about in all of our content and our advisory work, mainly because we know that research shows that the number one reason that startups fail is because ultimately their market or customer didn't want what they brought to market. And there's no amount of funding or great talent that's going to overcome that lack of product market fit. So you very early on went out and found customers that wanted what you were going to build and got them to help pay for it. So that's an important part in the beginning, but then how do you go about staying close to your customers and ensuring that as you iterate, that you're still aligned with their needs?
Yeah, and I'll say, Christy, that's one of the things that, as I was preparing for this call today, is as I grow as a CEO and take on more of those responsibilities, I'm less interacting with the day to day. So although that's a huge win, that as we scale, I have been able to replicate systems and processes, but it means that my interaction with my customers is less and less. But we do have systems in place to make sure that I am informed about that. With SureImpact, we have a customer success team and process. And so our customer success team is reaching out to our customers at least quarterly to understand, hey, do you have any problems? Do you have some training needs? Can we help you with anything? Same thing with our sales team if they are doing experience checks, because we have a unique product-led growth strategy in our business, and so we have sponsored customers that can become paying customers, and so our sales team will do kind of experience calls to understand if there's a need to expand SureImpact within that organization and become a upsell customer. And so one thing that we do that really encourages and motivates me is we use Microsoft Teams, and they chat me, right? If they have a great call, they just send a quick note and say, hey, talk to so-and-so. This is what they love about SureImpact. This is what they would like about SureImpact. So as I'm moving a little bit more away from the direct interfaces with our customers, making sure that I'm hearing their voices through my team. At the end of the day, we can't lose sight of, who we're here to serve, the problem that we're trying to serve, and customer success, customer delight is my number one focus. I think it's that first, then best in class technology, and then we can worry about scaling and growing and everything.
Right. Well, you got me thinking about one thing there that I know isn't on some of the things we talked about prior, but I'm curious as to how you think about knowing that you have such a high internal alignment and demand around customer focus, and knowing also that you want to create the team that can be empowered to make decisions. How do you think about things like managing failure on a team and managing the challenges that arise across the team?
Yeah. So I will say that as a business owner now in two businesses, this sounds really cheesy, but it's really true. Like, I've been blessed with amazing team cultures where we don't have a lot of icky staff stuff. That's just not been my experience. but obviously failure is in terms of, sales, you get rejected. You can have unhappy customers or unhappy clients. And so I think how we build a culture like that, or how we build a culture where you can manage that failure, is again, those systems and processes. So definitely attracting people with high emotional intelligence is important. I think for us, it's empathy and the ability to kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's really important. It's important for sales, but it's also just important as to be fun and like to work together. So that's the kind of a quality that I'm always looking for. And then follow the process, follow this. Like, if you have processes in place, if you have systems in place and they're data driven, and again, everything I do is data driven, just trust the process and keep going. And that's worked for me my whole entire career. And just, you're going to have some bumps and bruises along the way, but just keep trusting the process. And another thing is, we call it, and a lot of people call it this, the Groundhog Day or the after action review. When you do have a failure, or you do have something that would be perceived as less than successful, is saying, hey, what could have been done differently, let's do it better, and then systematize that new approach. And so I think just keeping that continuous learning and improving culture helps.
Being okay with having that conversation without pointing fingers. It's just like, here's where we are. Now let's talk about what we could have done to avoid this. That's something that we do as well on our team. I really appreciate that. Well, when you look at just all that you've done just in the last few years, going from a product idea to launching a product to having, now dozens and dozens of customers and new customers coming on board every week, what would you say is one of the most challenging points along that journey so far?
Oh, well, by far, definitely the fundraising piece of building this business has been the most challenging. My first business, I didn't need to do that. It was very easy, sustainable, bootstrap type of business. And so understanding the technology is expensive to get started. And understanding and navigating how do you fundraise? Who do you talk to? Just that, that learning curve for me has been the steepest, because then it also takes a lot of time and energy and effort to do that. And while you're doing that, there's only so many hours in a day. You're not selling, you're not touching base with your customers. And so for me, I think that's been and really important and rewarding part, but also the most challenging.
And I know you're knee deep in that right now, and you're working on your round. Are there any key learnings from that you feel like, oh, I wish I knew this 3 months ago or a year ago, I would have approached things in a different way? Anything that folks who are thinking about going after venture capital to build their business that would be helpful for them to know up front?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you mentioned, I'm still kind of very, very, very knee deep in it. So I'm sure in a few years, I'll have much more wise words, because I'm still rapidly learning. But what I'll say, I can speak to what I don't know yet, what I wish I would have done differently. I don't think I'm at that place in my career yet. However, I can say what has been helped me, or what has been helped me be successful. And that is, when I started this journey, I knew 0 people who had ever raised money for anything, like personally. So I've come a long way, because that's definitely not my case now. And so I think that I wasn't afraid to learn. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. I wasn't afraid to reach out to people. I mean, Rev One was my first place to go, because I at least knew, I knew of Rev One, and I knew that's what they did. So I was like, well, let's go there first.
Right.
And then just kept asking, kept talking to people. I still do that today. I kind of set a goal for myself that every day I must approach at least 2 people cold that I want to meet, but I don't know. You don't get a lot of, you don't get a lot of hits because it's a cold introduction, but when you get them, they open a lot of doors. So that's kind of been my approach. I mean, I guess if I had a crystal ball, I would know a lot more wealthy people. That would have helped me a lot.
Build your wealthy people network earlier.
Yeah. But I built my career in government and nonprofit. And so,
Yeah.
And that's been interesting because that's been an interesting learning curve. I don't know that I can overcome it. I don't know how I'll overcome it, but people like to invest in what they understand. And that's something that you have to understand, I think, going into this process is, and investors want large returns. So this would be something, if I would have known it earlier, maybe I would have had traction faster, is really understanding the numbers around how do you get to, or how can I prove that I can have $100 million exit or something like that, like really understanding those numbers and how to get there. If I had realized that earlier, I might have had success faster in the investment world.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. So we are starting to get questions. So I will just put a call out there for anyone who has a question. Please type it into the chat. We will open that up in just a few minutes. I have a couple more on my list here, but please do chat those. So we talked about challenging points in the journey. What would you say is the most rewarding point in your journey so far?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this every day is a reward. It really, I mean, that's so cheesy, but
no, it's not.
Because when you build something from nothing, like I've done now in both businesses, there's just so much intrinsic reward there. And then when I get I talked about the teams, and when our salesperson or customer success person or Matt is teamsing me something, there's just I don't know, that is the reward. It's like, for example, we had a customer tell our director of sales that SureImpact is saving them 2 hours a day. Like that, I can't tell you how much that just makes me so excited, because if not for SureImpact, they'd still be wasting 2 hours of their day.
Wow. That's validation right there.
Yeah.
Well, again, you know what my last question is before we open it up. So you're a CEO, you're a thought leader, you've built multiple successful companies. You're also a wife and mother. You work with your husband. Your children are school age, so you're navigating all that's going on there. And as you know, there's a lot written about work-life balance and women leaders. So how do you think about that concept of work-life balance, and what advice would you give other female leaders or potential company founders in that area?
Mm-hmm. So, well, there's no such thing as balance. That's the number one thing. There's priorities, and understanding what is the highest priority at that moment in that time in that life. But for females specifically, I will say you need support, however that looks for you, whether it's I am super blessed because my co-founder is also my husband, and we together made a decision 8 years ago now that we were going to be, because we were expecting our 4th child. I was growing a successful consulting business, and the decision for us was just, we're going to do this together. We're going to be true partners in raising our family and raising our business, growing our businesses. And so I have tremendous support. We have tremendous kind of give and take and balance. But that's my story. That's my relationship. And not everybody has that. And I do not recommend that everyone go work with their spouse. It works for us, but it's not going to work for everyone. But understanding that if you have children, you need support. You cannot do it all. The PTA needs the check writers, and I've just accepted that I'm a check writer.
That's my strategy as well.
Like, it's okay. But my kids,
right.
I do prioritize. And what's one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is if I have a 4 o'clock water polo game, I can manage my schedule so I can go to that 4 o'clock water polo game. But then maybe at 8 or 9 o'clock, I'm going to hop back on and finish up some emails. Like, I've actually found entrepreneurship fits a busy career, success-driven person like me much better than if I had a corporate job. It's been for me, but definitely, like, do not think by any means. That and oh, can I make a shameless plug for NABO?
Please.
So I am currently the president of the National Association of Women Business Owners, the Columbus chapter, and that has also been a huge resource for me because, you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you go to, my kids are 15, 12, 10, and 8. And so if I'm going to the soccer game or the back to school thing, and I look around at the other moms on the playground there, many of them cannot relate. They can relate to being a mother, and we can talk about that. But the understanding, like, oh, and I had, like I was telling a friend, like I have 2 pitches and a webinar tomorrow. That is not everybody's experience.
Right.
And so getting yourself surrounded by other women who have the same journey as you, and NABO has been a huge resource for me to not feel kind of like a freak. Like I go there and I feel normal because everybody else has 2 pitches and a webinar tomorrow.
Right.
That's just what we do. So find a support group as well, or a group of peers or friends who understand your journey and validate you and support you along the way.
That's great advice. And I know I feel very much that same way. And I frequently come back to the mantra of surround yourself with women smarter than you. And so in that whole outreach to find people to talk to, find people that are doing things in other industries or parts of business that you aren't, so that you can learn from them on what they're doing. So that's great advice. Well, I think we are going to open it up to questions now. I see some coming in here, but please continue to send them in. We'll start with Tina Fisher. Hi, Tina. How are you doing? I think most of us know Tina well. Tina asks, what has been your biggest learning experience in your sales process?
Yeah, so sales has been just as a personal growth development. I say back when I was at the state, I was a bureaucrat and a researcher and a psychologist. Like that's how you would I would define me. Mm-hmm. I would say I am not a salesperson. I don't do sales. I don't ever want to be in a job that does sales. And now 100% of my life is sales.
Right.
So that's definitely been a huge journey. So I think that for us, it's about that leading with empathy. That's how I've won. My whole career, and is just being authentic to who I am, really understanding who the customer's needs, what the customer wants, and then demonstrating how our product meets those needs and is the solution for them. And also being honest when maybe it's not a good fit. I've actually won deals by telling people that, well, SureImpact is not that, and it cannot do that. However, if you're looking for a solution that can do X, Y, or Z, SureImpact is your platform. And so just having that transparency and having that honesty and authenticity has worked. And then also just I know every market's different, every buyer is different, but understanding that, at least for us, and I know Tina, you sell to similar markets, is this concept of understanding the sales and buying cycle. And with the nonprofit community, there's often a lot of checks and balances because there may be boards that have to approve certain spends, and just making sure, we make sure we have a board pitch, we have an executive director pitch, we have a program director pitch, we have a development director pitch. So we understand who we're talking to and what the pitch is to them has been helpful.
That's really good feedback and just interesting learning of things that you've learned over time as well. Mm-hmm. Tanya asks, what is the vision for SureImpact's future?
Oh, that makes me excited. So I say this a lot, and I've always had this vision when it was just a document on a whiteboard of what SureImpact would do. But as QuickBooks is to small business, and SureImpact is not QuickBooks. We don't do what QuickBooks does, but it's a good analogy, especially for this audience, where, most small businesses, they adopt QuickBooks and they use it with their accountants and their CPAs and their, outsourced CFOs type thing. And it helps them run their business. I would love to see SureImpact as the impact management platform that nonprofits are using. It is the platform of choice because I think we're solving the problem in a way that none of our competitors are solving for it in that way. So that's a big, big vision. And I am open, like that is the vision. And I can't tell you how it's going to happen. And I've learned that along my entrepreneurial journey is never prescribe the how, because it's never going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. But I'm definitely open to achieving that vision, however it happens. And so I can't predict what that means in terms of, you know, my role with the company or who owns the company. But what I know is that's the guiding vision.
Thank you. That's interesting. And just knowing that you are open to the company taking you where it takes you as you are aligned with your customers, I think is refreshing. It's also difficult to do, right? When you want to have a plan.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to sound like I don't have a plan or a roadmap or all, yeah, we have all those pieces in place, but I'll give you a perfect example of how you have to be willing to adjust as opportunities come about. I mean, obviously, 5 years ago, I never thought I would be the CEO of SureImpact. I was going to grow this great consulting company. And so I had to adapt when the opportunity came to build SureImpact. And then with even SureImpact, the collaborative product-led growth that we have now available was a vision of mine. It was something I always wanted to do, but I thought I'm going to do that later. Like that'll be phase 2 or 3. But the opportunity came about where we had a person willing to buy, an organization saying, yes, we want this and we will buy it now. So had to pivot and say, we got to capitalize on this opportunity. We have to make this happen now, which then now we have product-led growth. Product-led growth wasn't even a thing that I thought about a year and a half ago. And so it was being willing to have an opportunity and think about it and say, how are we going to change? Let's figure this out. Like, let's figure this out. And I stand by it today. And I think even 10 years from now, that will have been the game changer for SureImpact.
Wow.
So just stay open to the opportunities.
Yes.
And that goes back to being data-driven. Like, I think because I'm such a data-driven.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listen to
it all reinforces itself.
Yeah.
We have a couple more. This first one is kind of like what I asked you before, but I think there's a nuance to it. So anonymous ask is what is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you during the early days of building your company? Any things that you stand out there, or maybe to younger entrepreneurs who may be thinking about it?
Well, I am one to not, I got a lot of advice that I didn't listen to, and I stand by that. No, you know, like, don't do it. It's too risky. There was a lot of that. So my one advice to starting out entrepreneurs is, if you see a path and you feel passionate about it, just keep taking small next steps. But I'm also really good. I'm really good at taking advice. I love it.
That's very true.
I mean, I'll tell you. So I pitched an organization to this week, and I did one pitch on last night and one pitch today. Based on feedback from last night, I made a few tweaks for a much bigger pitch today. So I don't know. I'm just always learning. I'm always innovating. I mean, you've seen that. You guys tell me to do something, and by the next week.
And you're quick about it too. So, well, you intrigued both Ashley and I with that comment that you made about that you got a lot of advice that you didn't take. How did you navigate the advice that you were given that you chose not to follow?
Well, so I look again back to like kind of understanding where that other person is coming from. Like, I always like to think about, one, what is their experience that's driving that advice? What is their motivation? And, you know, kind of like really understanding that. And then I love Brene Brown. I don't know if you read any of her, but she has a great TED Talk where she talks about, you know, only listening to the people who are also in the arena. And, you know, understanding like, is that advice coming from someone who has done it, is experienced, you know, and if not, then you go, okay, I thank you, you know, thank you, I'll think about it. But, and just kind of moving forward and understanding the goals that you want to have and you want to achieve. And a lot of times people advise, especially if they're not someone that's in the arena, they really want what's best for you. And entrepreneurship is risky and it's scary, and it's definitely not for everyone. And so if you hear that kind of negative advice, it's often because they want to protect you. And I'll say, and there may be attorneys and CPAs in the call, but I will say that their job is to protect you, right? I mean, that's what you pay them to do.
Right.
You don't get into legal trouble, don't get into financial trouble. And I've always looked at those advisors as, thank you for telling me all of the worst case scenarios.
But then you have to make the decision.
And then I'm going to move forward.
Yes. Which is, it's a difficult role to be in, because even when you think about your team, right?
Yeah.
There's the customer perspective, there's the product perspective, there's the service perspective, there's HR. You've got to always take a lot of inputs and then decide, well, what is the best decision with all of the knowledge that I have?
Yeah. Yeah. But if you, I mean, I think if at some point you don't just have your own agency and say, and I'm very, very big on personal responsibility for myself and our team. It's just like, hey, I'm willing to face and never bad consequences, but just like, I've taken in all the data, I've taken in all the facts, and then I'm willing to deal with whatever consequences could happen, and just owning it.
Yeah.
It's been a recipe for success for me.
So we do have another one here, anonymous question. Where are you in the fundraising process? Are you talking to angels, individuals, VCs? So you probably can't share tons there, but can you give a high
I know,
level?
I'm like, what am I allowed to share?
Yeah, probably, yeah. But
I will say, if you are on the call and you would like to be an investor in SureImpact, we have an open round, and I'm sure Rev One can get us connected.
You're good at this, aren't you? Well, so again, we're coming up on nearing the end. We do have time for a few more questions if you want to chat them in, but we also won't prolong this if you've got if we are near the end. But as you were talking earlier about the building the team and the, you know, celebrating success, but also leaving room for failure, and how do you learn from the failure? How has just the pandemic affected the organization, everything from the team environment to hiring, and what are some of the things that you've had to navigate or shift in that environment?
Yeah, our story is interesting because we launched our product to the full market in February of 2020. So I don't know what it's like to build a to like actually sell software without a pandemic. So maybe that's a gift, I don't know. But our go-to-market strategy originally was, since I am an author and often get asked to speak at conferences, our original plan was to basically sell SureImpact from the stage. So go to these conferences, talk about SureImpact, we have a booth in the hallway, demo the product live, hoping, praying that we get to do that soon at some point. To see if that increases traction or increases sales. I don't know. I haven't even had the chance to test that sales model yet. But we were lucky because of the thought leadership. We just pivoted and said, okay, we can't go to them. Let's invite them to come to us. So we basically hold monthly webinars where we make SureImpact a central character in the story. So they're not sales calls. They truly are thought leadership educational calls, but we make sure we show how SureImpact is the solution to these problems or challenges that we're talking about. And I've been like blown away. We get about 150 registrants to attendees. I mean, obviously this is a problem. It's something that our market really cares about. And so that's been our strategy. I very much look forward to the day when we can network again. If you don't have brand awareness, like we don't have really, it's kind of a slog. You've got to do like cold LinkedIn messaging and cold email outreach and begging your friends for connections and
Right.
referrals. And I mean, that's just been my journey. So hopefully it'll get easier soon.
Well, and you've made, lemonade out of lemons there because you've created a process that is repeatable. But it will be interesting because even just the energy and the input that you'll get from those in-person events will be
Yeah.
probably more at scale than what you're able to get
Yeah.
online as well, and the networking in the hallway. And so I think
Yeah. Just
everyone's
like,
excited about that.
I mean, I always say the 5-minute conversation in the bathroom
Yeah.
sounds weird, but sometimes those are like just understanding the nuance of that individual that you can use to build relationships is so critical.
Right.
We're all missing. I mean, not just SureImpact, but we're all missing in this world.
Agreed. Well, Ashley, I think that was it for the questions we saw coming in. Did any others pop in while we were chatting?
No, I think I think we were able to answer them all today.
Okay. Well, Sheri, anything you feel like we didn't talk about, or anything that you feel like you wanted to impart on this audience of entrepreneurs before we sign off?
No, I just, what I always like to say is just keep taking, I always say, what's the next faithful step? And just keep taking that. And I don't know, your life can go amazing places. Yeah, use the data and take the next faithful step. Those two ingredients, I think, are the keys to success. But thanks for the ability to share and reflect on all that's happened so far. And I'm really excited for what's to come.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a joy to speak with you, and I'm sure everyone on this call has very much enjoyed it. And we will be also sharing the playback and promoting this on social. So hopefully lots of other entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs will get to see this as well. So thank you again. And thank you all for joining us today. And we hope to see you at our next Founder Story. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.